I was Heinicke, y'all, your boy Rico from Street Schools, and y'all already know how we do this, man. With the stock ups, the stock downs, we have 5 positives, 5 negatives. You can call it studs and duds. I like to call it 5 fives and 5 lies. Either way, we got to take away 5 of the positive things that happened in that Eagles victory. There were a lot to choose from. I tried to narrow it down to 5, and of course, I don't restrict myself to players only. I may do a certain position group. I may do a certain thing from a certain player. And coaches are also eligible. So again, we're going to do 5 positive things to take away from the game. And then even after a victory, there were 5 negative things we could definitely take away from that game that we do need to fix and work on. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday for every live play-by-play analysis of every Commanders regular season games, and I'm speaking it into existence every postseason game as well. Because we played on Monday, I had it on Monday, but usually we play on Sunday, so make sure you pull up every time the Commanders have a game this season. I will be live streaming. We'll laugh together. We'll learn together, all of that. And for those of y'all that aren't able to watch the game, I try to update y'all on every play, what's going on, what's the down and distance, all of that type of stuff. But let's go ahead and get to it, man. Let's get it. All right, so I'm a positive person, very optimistic, very glass half full. So we'll start with the positives. We'll get to the negatives later. And some of it's nitpicky, but I just feel like after a victory, especially after a victory, we should definitely start with the positive. So number 1, I'm going with Terry McLaurin off rip. And the real 2 things that I want to focus on is Terry McLaurin versus any top corner. He's not afraid of anybody. He's got a hit list and he's scratching people off of it. And Terry McLaurin versus the Eagles. Now, of course, I have a lot of advanced stats that we're going to talk about today. Terry McLaurin has some of them. First of all, Terry McLaurin is 8th in the NFL in receiving yards and just ate up James Bradberry, Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. Didn't matter who they put on him. And remember, I posted a video about this. If you haven't seen it yet, Terry McLaurin, one time he beat them on like a nice little out route to the sideline. He literally yelled at the Eagles, "Don't ever put a safety on me again." I literally have the clip. You can hear it and everything on the live broadcast. Go check out that video on my channel as well. But Terry McLaurin was killing no matter who was in front of him. And I noticed that they didn't have James Bradberry on him much from what I remember. They tried to put Darius Slay on him, their supposed best corner. A lot of people feel like he's a top 5 corner in the NFL. I mean, really doesn't matter when Terry McLaurin can beat anybody. Never forget that Terry McLaurin killed Stephon Gilmore the year that he won Defensive Player of the Year. Not even top corner of the year. Defensive Player of the Year of the entire NFL. The only reason Terry McLaurin didn't go crazy stat-wise is because his quarterback was selling them that game. But he was getting open like crazy on Stephon Gilmore. I hope y'all remember that. That was very early in Terry McLaurin's career. And then he just killed Stephon Gilmore against the Colts. Speaking of that, he just killed Jair Alexander, who some people think is the best corner in the NFL just a couple of games ago. Again, killed Stephon Gilmore against the Colts. Had that crazy play, game-winning play almost. And I just simply can't wait to see what he does against the rest of his schedule. He's got to go against A.J. Terrell of the Falcons, who, shouts out to him, shouts out to Westlake, same school that Cam Newton, Adam Pac-Man Jones, Malik Willis, and I went to. So I've always been rooting for A.J. Terrell, and I love the fact that he's balling the way that he is. But Terry McLaurin's gonna kill him. He's still got to go against Denzel Ward with the Browns, Derek Stingley of the Texans. That's this upcoming game this Sunday. And then we got to get that Trevon Diggs rematch last game of the season against the Cowboys. And that's one of those games that may have strong playoff indications. It may be a situation where whoever wins that game gets one of the last wild card spots type of things. We got to win that game. And I mean, Terry McLaurin is just out here with a hit list, checking names off, just body bags. Doesn't matter which top corner you put on him, one-on-one, he's going to kill him. It's really just up to the quarterback to get him the ball, but he's always open. Also, Terry McLaurin versus the Eagles. He is an Eagles killer. Other than Terry McLaurin, the Eagles have not allowed a wide receiver to compile 80-plus receiving yards in a single game this season. Terry McLaurin got 102 on him week 3 and then just had 128 on him this past week. Terry McLaurin is the only receiver that has gone against the Eagles this year that has gotten at least 80 yards, and Terry McLaurin has hit them for a minimum of 102 each time. Come on now. Eagles killer, bruh. Eagles fans having nightmares about Terry, bro. I'm sure Darius Slay and all of those guys are as well. And just even going back to my point, kind of noticed that they didn't try to put James Bradbury on him because they know what would have happened. They've seen what James Bradbury has done against Terry when he played for Carolina and the Giants. They already knew they didn't want that matchup. But Darius Slay didn't do much better either way anyway, so, you know, it is what it is. Shouts out to Terry, man. Also, shouts out to Terry McLaurin for passing Gary Clark for the most receptions through 4 seasons in Washington franchise history. That's big time, man. And that's crazy because we still have pretty much half a season to go. So that's really crazy. That man Terry McLaurin's about to blow that record out the water. Especially when Taylor Heinicke's in that quarterback. You know, Taylor Heinicke has a lot of negatives, but he also has a lot of positives. And one of his big positives is that when he's the quarterback, Terry McLaurin's getting targeted. It doesn't matter what's going on. He's going to at least give him a chance, even if it's a terrible pass, even if it's double teamed, it's underthrown. At the very least, he's going to give Terry McLaurin a chance to go get it. And I'm forever grateful to Taylor Heinicke for that one. Number 2, man, Jack Del Rio is getting the most out of Derek Forrest in this young secondary. And he's finding a way to make up for the fact that Jamin Davis and John Bostic are our only healthy linebackers. And even entering this season, we weren't necessarily sure about Jamin Davis, let alone Cole Holcomb missing the past few games. David Mayo, his backup, has missed games. We had to bring in John Bostic off the street, and our defense is still dominating. Right now, after week 10, the Commanders have a top 5 DVOA defense, even after the terrible defensive start at the beginning of the season when we didn't have Cameron Curl, William Jackson was still in the lineup and things like that. And again now, Jamin Davis and John Bostic are our only healthy linebackers. Jamin Davis is out here having to play 100% of snaps, and Jack Del Rio is getting this defense to play lights out. He has been our best and most consistent top coordinator by far. Between him, Ron Rivera, and Scott Turner, Jack Del Rio has been our best coach. Ron Rivera, I mean, I feel like once he fixes his time management issues and situational awareness issues, he will be straight. Because as far as being a leader of men, a motivator, a disciplinarian, he's great at that. A culture changer, he's done all of that. But his time management is terrible. And then Scott Turner has been very inconsistent, but he called his best game yesterday, probably of his career. But we're going to get to him later. But right now, we're focused on Jack Del Rio, who has been our best coordinator this season. Let's start with just Derek Forrest. First of all, I love how creative he's been with Derek Forrest. He's an athletic freak. He was a late round draft pick. A lot of us thought, probably all of us thought, a realistic best for him was to be like a DeShazer Everett type of guy, a special teams ace type of guy. I mean, athletic freaks at the safety position come into the NFL every year, and not all of them pan out to be what Derek Forrest has turned into be. And then most notably, and we're going to talk about this with Benjamin St-Juste as well briefly, but Benjamin St-Juste and Derek Forrest are still kind of in their rookie seasons. They barely played at all last year. If we're talking about an amount of games played in or even just started, both of those guys still technically haven't played a full NFL season. So that's huge. But Derek Forrest, again, the fact that Jack Del Rio is getting so creative with the guy that athletic, that's what allows you to do that. He's athletic, he's a sponge, he's willing to learn, he learns fast. He had 20 snaps of free safety, 17 in the box, and 11 at nickel, and played every defensive snap against the Eagles. That's the type of versatility and production you're getting out of these young players. I mean, Cameron Curl and Bobby McCain are like the elder statesmen of the safety group. And Cameron Curl is only 23 years old. So the fact that our safety group is this crazy and they're this young, as long as we can pay them, we should have an elite safety core for many years to come. Cameron Curl, Derek Forrest, absolutely love it. I like Bobby McCain as well. I feel like he gets way too much blame for things that's not his fault. You notice that he's not out here making big mistakes since William Jackson's been gone. Just to talk about William Jackson briefly, my whole point with him is when you release somebody that athletic and that talented, our secondary technically got less talented once we traded them, but they technically got better after we benched them and traded them, because now the secondary is more versatile. Everybody can do zone, man, match coverage, all of that, off man, everything you want them to do. Everybody communicates better. There's no big holes in the secondary. Anytime a receiver beats a corner, it's because they just straight up beat them. It's not a miscommunication, somebody open by 10 plus yards anymore. That's done. That's dead. We no longer deal with that. Some guys are just faster than us, like when Justin Jefferson got Benjamin St-Juste, that was on a slot fade. I prefer Benjamin St-Juste on the outside anyway, and a slot fade really kills any slot corner, especially when it's Justin Jefferson, who some people will argue is the best receiver in the NFL. And then when Quez Watkins got deep on Benjamin St-Juste. We're going to talk about Benjamin St-Juste a little later, but I love Benjamin St-Juste outside. Danny Johnson has been stepping up since he had that terrible preseason. Started with an interception last week caused by Benjamin St-Juste. Kendall Fuller's playing his best football. These past 2 games have been his best by far this season. It just seems like removing technically the bad egg in William Jackson, even though again he was the most physically gifted and talented corner on our roster, but just mentally, technique, communication wise, our secondary has improved mightily since he's been gone. And again, the fact that these guys are so young make me so optimistic about the future, man. Our D-line with all of the young guys we have there is older than our secondary for the most part, outside of Kendall Fuller. And Bobby McCain's 29, so he's not that old, and even then he's not the star of our secondary. We could eventually replace him through the draft. Maybe that's we're waiting for Percy Butler to step up. Maybe Percy Butler is our future Bobby McCain replacement. And then we have this elite secondary. Remember, Pro Football Focus entering this game felt like Cameron Curl was the best safety in the NFL and Derek Forrest was the 4th best safety in the NFL. After this game, Cameron Curl moved to 2nd best safety in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. Derek Forrest moved from 4th to 3rd. So Pro Football Focus feels like the Commanders have 2 of the 3 best safeties out of the entire NFL. And I'm going to do a whole video breaking down how elite this defense has been, especially Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat is not getting enough credit. He's leading the league in a few categories that you probably don't even expect. Also, before we move on from Jack Del Rio and giving him his flowers right now, just to update y'all, and I saw this information on Twitter, the Commanders stayed in Buffalo nickel most of the game with 3 safeties playing 100% of the snaps. John Bostic had to play 86% of the snaps. Jamin Davis played 100%, and John Ridgeway only played in 8, but he had that one forced fumble that Jamin Davis recovered that resulted in 3 points for us, and which was huge. But basically, they kind of went with that, it seems like, to be able to combat the RPO. 3 safeties on the field literally every play that we played on defense. And then we also had Jamin Davis and John Bostic out there the majority of the time, because again, Jamin Davis played 100% of snaps, John Bostic played 86%. So we just had a lot more speed, a lot more second level guys out there just in case. And it worked. I mean, our defensive line is so dominant that we only need to rush 3 or 4 to get the job done, and that allows us to have 3 safeties on the field for an entire game. An entire game. That's crazy. Also, before we move on from Jack Del Rio, the Commanders are the only team this season to hold the Eagles to less than 100 rushing yards. We held them to 72 week 3 and 94 just now in week 10. Only team in the NFL. So Terry's an Eagle killer, and our defense is also an Eagle killer. Also, number 3, shouts out to Taylor Heinicke for having his most complete game all season. Now, there was some ups and downs, and he had some moments, especially that one terrible throw to Terry McLaurin. I don't even think the decision was that bad, even though I think it was Curtis Samuel and or Antonio Gibson were both open on that play. Terry McLaurin was technically open as well. If Taylor Heinicke throws it to the outside instead of inside, and on target rather than underneath, and early instead of late, that's probably completed for a big play. And that would be a huge play in the game. So, I mean, shouts out to Taylor Heinicke, though. Outside of that and a couple of other mistakes, this was easily his most complete game. Because leading up to this game, even though we're 4-1 under Taylor Heinicke, we've honestly been winning in spite of him. I mean, that Vikings fold, whoo, that interception right there, this one 2 nights ago was almost reminiscent of that. We were winning in the 4th quarter by more than a touchdown. Taylor Heinicke throws an interception, everything crumbles, we lose to the Vikings, who look like one of the best teams in the NFL. We were right there. That's also one of my major points overall about this team that doesn't really even have much to do with this stock up or stock down type of video. The way we competed against the Vikings, we should have won that. Benjamin St-Juste pick 6, we beat them, and then you beat the Eagles the following week. After that, there's an honest debate to say, are we the best team in the NFC? So we can hang with anybody. We just need more consistency from Scott Turner, Taylor Heinicke, in this offensive line. But we're going to get to that. Taylor Heinicke wise, though, man, shouts out to him, because again, in the past, we've been winning in spite of him. The Colts game, he was pretty much bad had until the final 5 minutes, and he turned on Taylor Heinicke mode. But my point is, we shouldn't only have 7 points with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter in the first place. I love the fact that Taylor Heinicke is so great in the clutch, but he shouldn't even be in these situations to where he has to be that clutch for us to barely win these games. We shouldn't have only had 7 points against the Colts by that late in the game. The Packers game, he was trying to sell us a couple of times. This game against the Eagles was by far his most complete game all season. He definitely has some intangibles. The team rallies around him. They just play better when he's out there. That's definitely a thing. At this point, you can even try to quantify it if you want to, because it's a real thing. Taylor Heinicke's ability to galvanize the troops is a real measurable thing at this point. But still, we've been winning in spite of him at times, which we're going to talk about a little later. I don't want to focus on that too much right now. Right now, I want to focus on the fact that, again, this was his most complete game. I mean, he honestly gave us a good at least 3 quarters. And that's the first time I can say that all season. Also, I mean, that heads-up play when the ball was snapped over his head by Tyler Larson to get the ball, run away from guys, and then somehow get the ball out of bounds past the line of scrimmage, and he made sure he ran out of the pocket to do so. He made sure he hit all of the checklist marks to be able to avoid an intentional grounding penalty. And that's huge, man, because a lot of younger quarterbacks would be trying to scramble and make something amazing happen, end up taking a huge sack. A lot of even veteran guys would do all of that first part right and then end up not getting it to the line of scrimmage or something, make some silly mistake, not getting out of the pocket. Shouts out to Taylor Heinicke, man. That was one of his smartest plays. And then also that Taylor Heinicke dime to the right side of the field was huge, man. That was one of his best throws of his career. He's starting to get a deep bomb to him. And that's not perfect, it's not consistent, but at least it's there. Last year, Taylor Heinicke, him throwing a deep bomb was pretty much impossible. Paper airplanes every time, just sailing, just taking forever to get to where they need to be. But this year, again, he's still inconsistent, and I wouldn't call him a great deep ball thrower, but at least it exists and it's happening. Again, it was impossible for him to do it in previous years. This year, at least there's a chance that he may actually hit it, and he's hit it fairly well, like 2 or 3 times already this year, and that's surpassed my expectations for him at this point already. And I'm pretty sure Terry McLaurin appreciates it as well, because I think he's caught all of them. And I love the fact that our ability to run the ball and run and play action brings the safeties and the linebackers up, and that's what allows us to hit Terry McLaurin deep down the field. So everything plays off of each other. But again, shouts out to Taylor Heinicke. Trying to remember any significant plays. I mean, again, the whole Carson Wentz situation. Carson Wentz, you can maybe argue, is a better pocket passer than Taylor Heinicke, and he can hit the more difficult throws better and more consistently. But at the same time, Taylor Heinicke is more consistent with the underneath automatic throws. If you just want a quick 4-yard route on 3rd and 3, I trust Taylor Heinicke to make that happen more than Carson Wentz. But even beyond that, the most important thing is with this offensive line and how much they've been struggling, even though they've been playing a little bit better as of late the past couple of games, just overall, just with the struggles, again, we got to remember this offensive line is very beat up. We're down to 3rd stringers, really a 4th stringer at the center position, honestly. Cornelius Lucas played more than Samuel Cosmi. Samuel Cosmi played a little bit, but we still have a backup right tackle. And then Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell, I mean, I don't even know what to say about those guys, but basically my point is, with the way that this offensive line is set up right now, and we don't expect them to go out there and be a top 10 unit game by game, Taylor Heinicke's just a better quarterback for what we have going on right now. I mean, Carson Wentz is just a statue. Still don't know why, because I thought he looked pretty mobile for the Colts last year. I don't know what happened in this flight to come to Washington, D.C., but either way, Taylor Heinicke is way better for this offense with his ability to use his legs to extend plays and do all kinds of things off schedule, avoid sacks and things like that. Those are all huge for this offense. Those are very important pieces. We need that for this offense to flow. I mean, on 3rd downs, just give the ball to Taylor Heinicke, and then he can run it if he wants to, or throw the ball to somebody if he wants to. But at least those options are out there to keep the defense honest. And then moving on, number 4, our 4th positive, and we're already 23 minutes into this recording, so boy, I got some editing to do. Hope this video doesn't run too long. But the 4th one will be Scott Turner probably having his best play calling game of his career. Probably even better and more creative than the Bucks win last season. I mean, just so many things to point out. But first of all, I just love the fact that he got the run game going the way that he did. Antonio Gibson has recorded his 26th career touchdown after the Eagles game, the most by a Washington player through their first 40 games in franchise history. So Scott Turner is getting a lot out of Antonio Gibson. And then just the two-headed monster, Brian Robinson had his best game of the season. I've been saying that I'm grateful to have Brian Robinson back, and it's still amazing that he's able to play NFL football after getting shot just a few months ago. But he hasn't been 100% this season until, honestly, up until this Eagles game. This was his best game by far, literally carrying people to first downs, like carrying 3 Eagles defenders to a first down when it shouldn't have been. Should have been only like a maybe 1-2 yard gain. He's carrying guys all the way to like a 5-6 yard gain. This was the first, and then that touchdown, the way he reached it out. I mean, just the way that we imposed our will. The majority of that was the offense and our ability to run the ball. Scott Turner's discipline was sticking with running the ball even when it didn't work every time. Shouts out to the offensive line for also making it possible. We bullied the Eagles, man. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. We even ran a QB sneak. Obviously, they knew we were running a QB sneak. We knew we were running a QB sneak. Everybody knew we were running a QB sneak, and we just bullied them and got it by at least a yard type of thing. And that was just happening all game. Our offensive line was mauling the Eagles offensive line, but I just love the way that Scott Turner, I mean, that was one of his most creative games as well. I mean, the way we used Curtis Samuel passing and running game, the way we used Terry McLaurin as much as we could, the way he gets the tight ends involved in the blocking game. I mean, at times with the way Cornelius Lucas was getting beat, it was literally John Bates basically blocking Fletcher Cox by himself at times because Cornelius Lucas was just so bad. And John Bates was out there making up for it, and we didn't really notice how bad Cornelius Lucas was because of how great John Bates was. And I just love the fact that Scott Turner got Logan Thomas involved in the pass game a little bit, but for the most part, the way that he uses these dual threat tight ends to pose a passing threat, but then they can also run block, and that helped us be able to run the ball. I mean, the fact that we ran the ball 49 times against them is absolutely ridiculous. It wasn't the best yards per run stats. Like, it was actually not even good, honestly, but we just kept doing it. They couldn't stop us, and running the ball the way that we did, even though it wasn't highly successful, even though it wasn't very efficient, it was putting us in 3rd and shorts, and Scott Turner was in his bag. Taylor Heinicke for a lot of the game was in his bag, and we were just picking up 3rd downs like it was nothing. So shouts out to that. Also, Washington 17 minutes 38 seconds of first halftime of possession margin is their highest first half time of possession margin in franchise history. Shouts out Scott Turner for that. And then, I mean, we could talk about Scott Turner for like hours. I mean, like, we could do a whole film session on that. But just to give y'all some of the major points, man, shouts out to Scott Turner. Arguably his best play calling game of his career. Then number 5, the man himself, man. There's no way y'all thought we were going to make it this whole video without talking about Joey, that guy Sly, man. He is our franchise kicker, plain and simple. I mean, he can miss a 20-yarder against the Texans, and I'm going to still at least have hope. Because after what I saw him do against the Eagles, and there's no excuse for missing 20 and 30 yarders, but after I saw what he just did against the Eagles, expectations are higher. But at the same time, I know he's got it in him. He's just got to be more consistent. He accounted for 14 points alone. If you take away that fluke 6 points that we got on that fumble to end the game for a touchdown, I mean, Joey Sly really won this game for us, man. He went 4 for 4 field goals, 2 of 2 on PATs. He had a career high 58-yarder and also a 55-yarder. Now, the 58-yarder was right before halftime, so whether he missed it or not, granted, 3 points is big in a game like that, but there were no potential ramifications or negative possibilities after that could have went down. But that 55-yarder he made, even though it was 3 yards shorter than the 58-yarder, that was kind of more pivotal, because if he misses that, the Eagles start with better field positioning. But instead, we kick it off. I think they start on like their 25 rather than like our 40-yard line. And who knows what happens after that? The Eagles are really good at capitalizing on having great field positioning, but constantly keeping them starting from their own 25-yard line makes them actually have to run 80-yard drives, is how you do a better job of holding them to less points and things like that. And that's what our defense and our special teams and our offense collectively did a good job with. You force the Eagles to play a long field. And again, that 55-yarder that he made, if he misses that, I mean, who knows what happens after that? Maybe the Eagles just go on a long touchdown scoring drive and maybe we lose the game. You know what I'm saying? So we needed every one of those kicks. We needed every one of those points. Also, shouts out to Joey Sly because he won NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. He more than deserves it. I got to go see how many fantasy points he had because, boy, 14 points alone as a kicker and then a 58, 55-yarder has to be crazy fantasy points. Also, speaking of Joey Sly, After he connected on his 58-yard field goal, it is the longest made field goal by a Washington kicker since Graham Gano hit a 59-yarder against San Francisco in November 6th of 2011. Also, Sly's 58-yard field goal is the longest made field goal against the Eagles all time by a Washington kicker ever. So those are some really interesting random advanced stats, man. Shouts out to Joey Sly. We have a franchise kicker. Was a little worried. I felt like it was the right decision to move on from Dustin Hopkins, but it does suck when you let Dustin Hopkins go and he's making game winners for the Chargers, and then you have Joey Sly who missing 30-yarders and even PATs. It looks like Joey Sly is finally in the swing of things. Maybe it's the Taylor Heinicke effect. Maybe the Taylor Heinicke effect also brought out the greatness in Kendall Fuller. Suddenly everybody's playing well. Even the people that were playing poorly are finally playing well. It's crazy. And then now let's get to the stock downs. And especially after his victory Monday/Tuesday, victory week period, I don't want to spend too much time hampering on the stock down, so we're going to kind of run through them. I'm going to make some points, but I mean, I'm already 30 minutes in the recording, 30 minutes and 55 seconds in the recording. We just did the positives. I mean, of course, when I edit it down, it's going to be shorter, but we're not going to go another 30 minutes for these negatives. I don't want to hamper on it too much. The mood is too positive. Everybody's so jovial and excited. We're talking our trash. We got our chests out, so I'm not going to dive into the negatives too much, but you know Rico of Street Scores, we're going to be objective. There's always some good in there's always some bad from every situation. We got to talk about all of it. We're not going to ignore the bad when we win. We're not going to ignore the positives when we lose. I'm just going to be completely objective, blunt, and straightforward every week, no matter the result. So we got to talk about the downs, but again, I don't want to hamper on it too long. So first stock down, number one, Benjamin St-Juste versus shifty, quick guys. I mean, I already kind of felt this way, but after a couple of weeks in a row of him struggling against smaller guys and shiftier guys, especially in the slot, I think it's pretty much confirmed that we need to have him on the Mike Evans of the world. We need to have him on the D-Hops, even Justin Jefferson. His best trait is him being a separator and a route runner, but he's still 6'1". He's quick, but he's not Quez Watkins and Devonta Smith and like, I don't want Benjamin St-Juste on the Tyreek Hills and the Odells and things like that, or Amari Coopers. I want him on the best bigger receiver if they have one. I want him on AJ Brown all game. I want him on Justin Jefferson even. I want him on D-Hop. I want him on Mike Evans. I want him on all of these guys. When we play the Falcons, I want him on Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I want him to cover Kyle Pitts and both of those. I want him to cover all of those type of guys. So just kind of a stock down on him versus shifty, quick guys. I love Benjamin St-Juste, and I feel like at the very least he's an elite CB2. But I mean, honestly, if you don't want to go corner high in the draft and get like a Keely Ringo in the first round or something like that from my Georgia Bulldogs, I'm perfectly fine with Benjamin St-Juste being our number one corner. I feel like he's a really good number one corner. I feel like once the refs stop hating on him and start to respect his game, he'll start to get less penalties called on him, because I feel like that pass interference down the field would not get called on the top corners. Jalen Ramsey could do that exact thing. It's not getting called. Even Sauce Gardner right now, with how prolific he is, that probably doesn't get called on him. So I feel like once Benjamin St-Juste starts to get more of the benefit of the doubt, or at least an even level in playing field, he'll be super straight. So I'm not worried about that. But Jack Del Rio, doing a great job, but can we just try to keep Benjamin St-Juste on the bigger guy? I prefer him to cover Dallas Goedert than to cover Devonta Smith. I prefer for him to cover a Travis Kelce than I prefer for him to cover a Kadarius Toney and McCole Hardman, in my opinion. And then number two stock down, Washington tight ends being a dynamic part of the passing game. Again, I want to give Scott Turner all of the credit for the way that he's using the tight ends in the running game, and even just them posing the threat in the passing game is opening up the run game as well. So they're involved in the passing game a little bit because, I mean, just complementary football wise and domino effect and stuff like that. One thing helps the other, that thing helps the other thing, all of that type of stuff. But I was expecting going into the season to see Logan Thomas, I mean, arguably have like a 500, maybe even 800 yard season. I was expecting, after we got my boy Armani Rogers, especially the way he looked in the preseason, and even the way he's looked times this season. I mean, that end around that he had against the Vikings for 22 yards on 3rd and 1 was beautiful. He's an athletic freak. I'm going to keep saying it. He has Darren Waller potential. We just need to, cultivate it, develop him. It's probably going to come with time, but I mean, we just have crazy athletes at the tight end position. And then, of course, Cole Turner dealing with a hamstring injury all season, and then he comes back concussion off of a bad Taylor Heinicke ball, one of those hospital balls that he's known for throwing. And then now we don't have him. And then John Bates, I mean, I feel like he's somewhat of a dual threat tight end, but again, he can block Fletcher Cox one-on-one at times like he did in that game. So I'm not even mad at the fact that he can't be a dynamic passing game option. He can catch a pass if he's open. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an offensive coordinator's job to scheme open tight ends. Most of these tight ends in the NFL can't get open on their own. It's only like a handful of guys, maybe even less than 5, that can actually do that. Everybody else is getting open because they're schemed open. And so it's really up to Scott Turner if they want to get John Bates involved in the passing game for Scott Turner to get him open. But either way, man, I love our tight ends, and especially when we're healthy, I think they'll be a great part of this offense, most notably because of the run game. And then when we get Cole Turner back, maybe, and then once Armani Rogers develops some more, maybe they'll become more of a dynamic part of the passing game. But as of right now, the tight ends are just not doing what I expected as far as putting up stats and things like that. They're still great, love them. But again, this is one of those kind of petty stock downs where I just kind of threw that in there. Like, I just want to bring it to people's attention. But it's not a big negative. But I just do feel like that it is something that should be brought up. And then number 3, offensive line inconsistency gets on my nerves. Even against the Eagles, they were better, but they weren't great. A lot of it was Taylor Heinicke maneuvering. Again, a lot of it was John Bates helping Cornelius Lucas. And even then, Charles Leno, our most consistent offensive lineman, at least out of all of the healthy guys. I mean, a strip sack the first drive of the game to put us down 7-0. You know, when the Commanders are down 7-0, it pretty much feels like the game is over. Like, it's just, we might as well just go ahead and wrap this up. We're done. We're not gonna be able to outscore the other team for the rest of the game enough to make up for it. And then Cornelius Lucas, we brought Samuel Cosme in for a couple of plays, and I thought he played pretty well. Then we brought Cornelius Lucas back. He had a false start, one play that hurt our drive pretty bad. And then later on in that drive, he was the one that gave up the sack against Taylor Heinicke. That, I mean, Joey Slye ended up making the field goal, so it didn't really affect us that much. But who knows, man? On that third down, if Cornelius Lucas blocks his guy, maybe Taylor Heinicke finds enough time to get an open receiver in the end zone for a touchdown instead of a field goal. And then just, I mean, the overall inconsistency from the inside, the interior, Tyler Larson, that terrible snap. You know what I'm saying? So even though y'all played better, y'all still didn't play very well as an entire unit. Y'all weren't very consistent. So I just still feel like that's notable enough to include it in the stock downs. But again, y'all weren't terrible, but it wasn't the best. Number 4, Heinicke, man. Heinicke with the lead in the 4th quarter is scary. Interception on the way, it seems like guaranteed, man. 2 games in a row, like I briefly talked about earlier. Up 10 against the Vikings, interception. I believe up 9 against the Eagles, interception. Like, come on now. It's like you're just trying to just sink our hearts in. We have all of this hope. We're beating a team that nobody expected us to win against, and then you just try to sell the game. Come on now, Taylor Heinicke. Again, your most complete game of the season, arguably one of your most complete games of your career. Very happy and proud of your performance. Again, you're from the Metro Atlanta area, so if anybody's your biggest fan, I'm one of them. I mean, I root for all of anybody that's from Atlanta or just Georgia, period, on the Commanders. Montez Sweat, Jamin Davis, Antonio Gibson, Taylor Heinicke, even Alex Armall, the fullback that we activate sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So if anything, I'm one of your biggest fans, but at the same time, I'm objective. I'm not blinded by my loyalty to my fellow Atlanta brothers. And it's just like, man, what is going on when we have a 4th quarter lead on good teams? 2 games in a row, what's going on? Also, I want to note the fact that Heinicke only had a 58 completion percentage against the Eagles with a 69 QBR, 211 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And you can argue that's probably his best stat line this season, honestly, outside of touchdowns, because he already had a 2 touchdown game this season, and he had another one where he had 1 touchdown. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, his best game of the season, and that's the stat line that came out of it. It's a little crazy. Also, over the 5 games that Heinicke has started, even though he has gone 4-1, he has an average of a 60 completion percentage, 202 passing yards per game, 3 total touchdowns, 3 total interceptions, only 5 big-time throws with 9 turnover-worthy plays. That's not great. And again, we've been winning in spite of him up to the point of this Eagles game. I felt like he actually played well enough to say that he helped us win this game. He was a big reason why we won this game. But still, overall, throughout this 4-1 5-game stretch, It hasn't been great, and I really want him to step it up. He's limited in certain ways, but I feel like there's even things that he could even correct, like reading the field and making decisions quicker. Because again, even this Terry McLaurin interception where he tried to throw it down there, if you throw that sooner, even if you throw a paper airplane, even if you throw a rainbow pass for no reason, even if you throw it too far inside instead of the outside, if he throws it sooner and realizes that's who he wants to go with sooner, and just, you know, knows pre-snap, reading the defense, that's where he wants to go pre-snap, and already makes up his decision, does his drop back and throws it immediately, maybe that play still goes for a big gain, and we're not talking about how inaccurate he is and how much arm strength he lacks and things like that. So there are things that he can control. Interceptions, first of all, throwing those are definitely controllable. But again, I want to congratulate Taylor Heinicke because this was a great game. But when we're doing the stock downs, we got to break it down and look at the positives and negatives, even if it comes from the same person. Nobody's perfect. So everybody has their moments where they have good plays and bad plays. I wanted to point out both throughout this video for Heinicke. But again, congratulations to another fellow Atlanta guy, man. Great game. And then number 5 and the 5th and final stock down, the refs for both teams, man. I mean, we most notably got away with a Jamin Davis face mask that led to 3 points for us. But the Eagles got away with a bad pass interference call on Benjamin St-Juste, in my opinion, which led to a touchdown eventually. And then they also had a bad call on Jahan Dotson, saying that he illegally picked the DB. Even the commentators were like, I thought he had the right to run that route the way that he did. I thought he ran that route fairly well. It didn't look like he was literally just trying to get in the DB's way. It looked like he honestly tried to run his route. That should not have been called. And I love the play call from Scott Turner. That was one of my favorite play calls from Scott Turner all day. That was one of my favorite throws from Taylor Heinicke all day. Curtis Samuel wide open. The game should have ended there. We shouldn't have even been in that situation for that whole controversial late hit thing on Taylor Heinicke at the end, where a lot of Eagles fans are upset about and blaming the refs for. We shouldn't even been in that situation if they didn't call that illegal contact pick on Jahan Dotson. So the refs just gotta boo them for both sides, because they gave us some things that we didn't deserve and they gave them some things that they didn't deserve. And overall, man, I think it pretty much canceled out. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. As always, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, names you see scrolling on the screen right now. And of course, definitely let me know how you feel about my stock ups and stock downs. Do you agree or disagree with any of them? Would you add any? Would you take some away? Let me know, and I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.